Okay, real quickly, I wanted to introduce some of the more important Civil War generals and talk about their roles um, from both the North and the South. You had many famous generals here that would make a name for themselves in this war. Some had made a name for themselves previously. Other ones had would go on to great things after the war as well. Now, there were hundreds of generals in the Civil War. Both the Union and Southern Army were led by a large group of people whose jobs varied um, to a wide degree. Some were mainly administrative general positions that did not see a lot of action. Other generals would regularly lead troops into action. That's not the case with generals today. They are not battlefield commanders. They are um, leaders, decision makers, strategists, but they do not actually lead troops in battle. The Civil War, um, most of them actually did participate in the combat. So let's look at a couple of these people from the Union side. The Union had a several changes in leadership. As we said, General Lee was offered the full command of the Union Army at the start of the war, but he chose to fight for the South instead. So North, deprived of their first choice, went through a series of different commanders. Three of those big ones, big names there, are George B. McClellan and Ambrose Burnside, and then by the end of the war, Ulysses S. Grant, who has perhaps the most fame out of any of these guys coming from the northern side of the war. Um, McClellan, you read a little bit about yesterday in the textbook. He was the leader for a couple of the early years in the war. He would be fired and rehired multiple times. Um, Burnside today is perhaps known for his sideburns. That name comes from him, sideburns. But he served very briefly after McClellan and was eventually replaced as well. Grant, again, the most famous guy, wasn't even appointed until towards the end of the war. He had fought mostly on the western frontier of the war and made a name for himself out there before being promoted to the main commander and was general at the end of the war. But there are many other people who weren't the main leader of the war that would be very famous. Joseph Chamberlain, who is one of the heroes of Gettysburg, we're going to be learning about. Joseph Hooker, and William Tecumseh Sherman, and we will learn about him too. He would also get lasting fame because of this war. On the southern side, the Confederate generals, they were a little bit more organized than the North in terms of leadership. They followed Robert E. Lee the entire war. He was a Virginian, offered the command of both armies, chose his home state over the Union, despite being personally opposed to slavery. Um, he fought for the South, and he was aided by a bunch of able military commanders. A lot of these guys had fame and experience in the United States Army before the war, and it was their leadership which actually gave the Confederates a lot of success in the early years of the war, despite all the disadvantages one might have suspected the South to have. Their leaders rose to the challenge militarily and strategically, um, but it would not last forever, as we will soon see. Some of those top guys: James Longstreet, um, another general opposed to slavery, but still fights for the South. Thomas Stonewall Jackson, the most famous Southern general other than Lee, um, fighting at Bull Run. He got the nickname Stonewall because he held firm and eventually turned back the Union forces. He's very successful um, Southern general, and his death, the hands of friendly fire, actually is kind of a lucky stroke for the Union and a turning point in the war. Other famous ones: Jeb Stuart, a very young guy, um, in, in his early 30s, reaching the rank of general and a cavalry expert. George Pickett, who will be a famous name in the Battle of Gettysburg that we will hear about, and then John Bell Hood, another one. These guys despite being the South, are have earned lasting fame because of this war, and certainly controversial figures, but in some circles, respected ones too. So there are a lot of generals. When you make your Mount Rushmore, you can feel free to choose from the South or the North. If you don't choose any Southern because, well, we want the North to win, obviously, that's okay, but maybe not doing them justice for their military. So try to be a little unbiased in your decisions here. Who do you think the most important were? Doesn't mean your favorite. Most important, though. Okay. Let me know if you have questions and have a great day. Watch the YouTube videos, read the little biographies on these guys, and then make your Mount Rushmore.